Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host here, the old salty dog, John Martin, and, of course, the captain of our pirate ship, the ever steady Mr. Ted Yoho. Howdy, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing? Good to see you there, Johnny boy. You got your Hawaiian fishing shirt on.
Well, it's actually, if you look at it, it's actually a dinosaur shirt. It looks Hawaiian, but it's got dinosaurs all over it. Because sometimes in this day and age, for various reasons, I feel like I might be a dinosaur.
Don't tell me somebody gave you that as a Father's Day gift, just to show your age or remind you of your age.
Something like that, Ted. I tell you what, man. It's if things keep going like they are for our country, though, we might all be go the way of the dinosaurs. It's it gets crazier by the moment out there.
Hard to believe, isn't it? Hard to believe that it gets more wacky out there than what we've seen. I mean, at some point, there'll be an inflection point where things break. The wheels come off the bus.
Absolutely. Well, there's a story I want to talk about today, and it involves Russia and the United Kingdom, because there are reports out there that Russia is looking to expand the war effort with the Ukraine. And as we've talked about many times, that particular part of the world, still to this day, even going back to ancient history, they have fighting seasons, so to speak, because we're approaching a time where it's almost impossible to have normal, if you want to call it that, warfare in that area of the world in Ukraine, because the winters are just brutal. And so they tend to escalate right about this time, because their winters start basically a month from now or two and last until, spring. So it's not unusual to escalate, but there are reports that Russia is actually speculating on using tactical nukes. I'm not saying they are, but there's speculation to that, Ted.
Well, there has been that. I mean, that's been a ploy that, that Putin's played. If you go back to when Ukraine was wanting to get into NATO, Putin said, if you do that, we're going to use tactical nukes. And that was back probably, I was still in Congress, so it had to be around 2017 to 2020. And that threat is there. And what you have seen, when Trump was in there, all that rhetoric dropped down. But when Biden came back in, of course, Putin went into Ukraine. And if you've watched the media, and I know you have, you look at the drone excursions that have gone into like Romania, Poland, and some of these other countries. And Russia always says, oh, it got off course. That's all that's a lie is what it is. Because these things are highly controlled by AI and GPS and humans on it. And so it was not a mistake, and it's testing the waters is what they're doing. And they know that America is pulled down on their armaments, and that relationships between us and NATO is waning. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he did, but it'd be a huge mistake.
Yeah, well, there's reports, and both Russia now and the United States have confirmed them, that this past week that the head of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, actually flew to Moscow for a direct meeting with Putin. And the United States has been a bit vague about what it was about, and so has Russia, and you can certainly understand why. But the reports basically say that he went over there to warn Putin not to use tactical nukes, not to go that way, not to escalate the war, or there could be some trouble. Exactly what that trouble would be, I don't know. But it seems like that's a pretty strong statement to make.
Well, it is, to go over there and forewarn another country that you don't want to do this. I don't know what the point of that is. Some people will read that as a weakness, that you're saying, don't do that. This is the wrong time to do that. Um, but then you have to look at the reality on the ground, and you look at what NATO is doing. These other countries, they're all beefing up, and Germany's leading this. The production of defensive and offensive weapons in the European Union, and Germany put in $1 trillion that they were going to invest into military assets. And then you look at what happened with Canada and the United States. Mark Carney of Canada said that we're going to pivot away from the United States. We're going to build our own military industrial complex. And so people are moving away from us. So Putin sees this as a weakening of that whole alliance, and he'll move on that, maybe going into some of those Baltic countries that used to be under the umbrella of Russia. But again, this will be a bad, bad mistake because it will fulminate war, and it'll be a cohesive moment that brings NATO back together, because an attack on one, Article 5 of the NATO agreement says an attack on one of the countries is an attack on all, and they all respond together. So let's hope this doesn't happen, that common sense comes. Um, I hate to wish anything bad on anybody, but just Putin get out of power, would be the best thing, and go in a new direction.
Yeah, well, people are probably, and I'm no expert on this, Ted. You probably know much more about it than me, but I think people need to understand kind of the definition of tactical nuke versus, the mushroom cloud, because there is a difference. And I'm not trying to absolve anything, but tactical nukes, as I understand it, are basically designed to use power of a nuclear explosion as far as destruction to a certain extent, not like the Hiroshima bombs, but a lot less radiation, so that you can actually go back in there after a while and take over that land and use it, is what I understand is the difference. And maybe you could correct me on that. And I'll say this and turn it back to you, that the United States has tactical nuclear weapons. And I'm not, all the
Sure.
major nuclear powers do. And we have in the past actually bubbled up talking about, in certain situations, using them. We haven't totally taken them off the table ourselves. So, but to me, the danger is, even if that were true, what I said about the nuclear weapons, that triggers a further escalation that ultimately would probably lead to doomsday type stuff. But what are your thoughts on all that, Ted?
I think a tactical nuke is like being a little bit pregnant. I'm just a little bit pregnant. A nuke is a nuke. A tactical nuclear weapon is a short range, lower yield nuclear device designed for specific battlefield or localized military targets rather than total destruction of the cities rendered by a strategic nuclear. So it's a smaller nuclear weapon. So, yeah, you may can go in there earlier than a big one. So, what are you talking about? 50 years instead of 100? I mean, if we've gotten to a point where we have to use those, something has failed in humanity. And, it's interesting. I do a lot of reading, and I'm reading just finished up a book. And, you can go back to the Roman era, and these same conflicts, different weapons, different leaders, but the same conflicts arise over the same thing. It's power, it's money, and it's ego usually. And, history just repeats itself. Carolyn was reading me something today about SpaceX and all the things they're going to do. And SpaceX is planning over 1,000 rocket launches this next year. 1,000. Look at the resources being put into research and development and things like that. If we all did that, instead of being in these games of trying to destroy each other, let's move together, making humanity stronger collectively. You live your life the way you want to, and let you live your life the way you want to. I'm going to stay out of it. I'm going to build our country stronger. But we don't do that, John. History doesn't do that. We haven't matured enough, I don't think, as humans.
I was having a conversation with my youngest daughter the other day. We went out to lunch together, and we were talking about, and I was telling her, that that really the world is a lot closer to World War III than a lot of people think. And we were out at an area, the Butler Plaza area. I know you're familiar with it. And a lot of people there shopping, doing their thing and everything. And basically, I said, what do you think would happen if all of a sudden bombers were to hit our country and we had, forget nuclear, just destruction? I said, I just don't think our people would be ready as they were in World War II for that, because and I don't think people really understand how it seems like the human race every 50 to 100 years just has to come to the brink of annihilating themselves, and throughout history,
Oh, that's a fact. Yeah.
we've used, when I say we, I'm talking about human beings, we've used the most lethal weapons possible at those times, whether it was 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago, the most lethal weapons at that time to destroy our quote enemies. So I don't see really anything that has changed in human nature, really, to me, worldwide. I'm talking about.
You're absolutely right. Um, it's about every 80 to 100 years, there's a major conflict around the world. And if you go back to World War I, that was the war to end all wars. Well, it didn't work. And so here we are having these same arguments. Putin wants to reclaim Mother Russia because it's an ego thing. And it's just, come on, guys, this is 21st century. We've got a lot better things to do than this. Um, and then, we've moved into the realm of, as Samuel Huntington says, the next conflict is going to be ideological or cultural. It'll be cultural. And that's what we're seeing going on now. Um, you see the different cultures in the world starting to fight against each other. You see what's going on in the European Union between the Muslim nations and the Christian nations. You're seeing it here in our country. And, these things will come to a head. And then you have the media and the talking heads out there that just inflame it. And you have other countries investing in that narrative to just inflame that, and their whole goal is to weaken our country. And we just need to educate people and say, don't fall for these things. Think about the greatness of America. Think about the good things about America. Think about where we should be going, and not get pulled into places where we shouldn't be, like the Iran war. So those are the things that we're here for, is to educate people and get you to think about that. Let's get away from that garbage. Um, if you don't want to get involved in it, just don't listen to it. Let's do stuff over here and put representatives in Congress and the Senate that aren't going to play these games. So, anyways, I'll turn it back over to you, Johnny.
Well, there's some other reports that really make this story even more interesting and possibly dangerous. That there's reports that Moscow, that Putin and Russia are considering attacks against the United Kingdom, not necessarily nuclear, not necessarily overtly, but at least covertly, because the UK has been a big supporter of Ukraine, not so much with troops on the ground kind of thing, but with technology. And they've been sharing a lot of technology lately. Seems like they've grown in their support for that, as European has. And of course, we have talked about that it's more of a European issue than the United States issue. But the thing is, if obviously, if Russia were to bomb the United Kingdom, that would open up a can of worms that we could not ignore. But what if they start a subterfuge that we're aware of, attacking their technology and their military stuff with drones and that type of stuff? I can see how this thing could have a creep to it, where it ended up being a catalyst for a potentially world war.
It would. And you get people like Putin, they don't care about negotiations. They have a hammer and they want to use their hammer. Um, the best way to do that without using a hammer is go after infrastructure. Put out power grids. Disrupt their water supply, disrupt their communications, their banking, and they're already doing that with all the the hacks that they have going into the cyber world, going into the banking and financial situations or infrastructure. So they're already doing that. And then you run campaigns that go after hate speech, and anybody that talks about another race is hate speech. And that's what we're seeing going on in the UK now. If you say something that their committee deems as controversial or racist, they go after those people. And so that breaks down the internal structure of that country and weakens it, and it divides that country. And so that's the subliminal warfare that's going on that really brings the country to its knees. And then you inflame the race issue, the cultural issues between Muslims and Christians, and you just keep that going, and you're winning a war without firing bullets. And you know who's best at this is China. What do you ever hear about Xi Jinping that's controversial in comments he says? You never hear anything. He just sits in the back and he watches. He's not bombastic. He's just matter of fact, and they know what they're doing. They've got a long-term plan, and they let everybody else destroy themselves. Of course, they're throwing seeds out there to disrupt the societies, with these medias and paying these protesters, and give them support to people like Hassan Piker, and let them destroy it from within. It goes back to what Khrushchev says. America will fall from within.
Yeah, well, what gets me about China is it's just hard to believe that they actually tolerate, a bunch of no kings rallies over there, and that they tolerate, people attacking law enforcement officers in China when they're trying to get rid of illegal immigrants. Oh, that's not China, that's us. I'm sorry, I got confused.
Those things would not happen.
When was the last time we saw a protest in China? I think it was Tiananmen Square, right? And they brought out the tanks to attack basically college students.
Yeah, I think Tim Walz was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was. I don't think he was the one standing in front of the tank, though.
Yeah, but, how many protests you see in Russia that we hear about?
Not
how
any
about
that
Cuba?
last.
How about Venezuela? You hear about any in North Korea?
Yeah, well, Cuba does have one thing in common with the MAGA movement. They do have every now and then boat parades. It's a slightly different boat parade where they're actually all flooding to Florida in a boat, which is probably coming soon again. But
I suspect so. Yeah.
One thing that when I was reading this story and putting it together that really kind of hit me, did NATO, and I'm talking not really the United States, but NATO, the European side of it, because, Trump was like, we don't need to be involved in this much, but they were like full bore, oh, we need to do this and that and support Ukraine. And I'm not even against Ukraine. I'm just putting this out there. Did they ever consider, Ted, that there could be consequences from siding with Ukraine, that Russia would react in some way? And I'm not supported, because if you question something, it's like, you're a Putin fan. No, I'm a fan of history, or I study history. And I'm not surprised that, as a matter of fact, let me back up. I actually think that in some ways, Putin has shown more restraint than I thought he would when this first started, to be honest with you. And I'm not giving him credit for that. I'm saying I'm not saying it's out of the goodness of his heart. There's a tactical reason behind that. But I actually thought he might escalate this thing from the very beginning.
It is amazing that they haven't done more faster. I still think of when they were first going to invade. Remember how they got hung up on the roadway or the bridge because they didn't have the fuel to fuel all those trucks? And the whole line of military vehicles were right there. Ukraine could have acted then and just obliterated that, but they didn't. And then Putin has the armament supposedly where he could obliterate Ukraine. And so I don't know, John. You got to wonder what the ultimate play is here and who's controlling that. But for Putin to want to go into and do the nonsense like he's done with Poland and Romania, with the drones flying those in there, I think it'd be a huge mistake to even move on on any other country in that borders Russia. And this is why the countries that border Russia pulled out of the landmine treaty, and they put landmines along their borders. Those countries like Latvia and Slovenia and all those other ones. Um, so these are dangerous times. We're seeing an escalation in that. The thing with NATO is, um, if Putin does move on one of those countries, it's going to invoke Article 5. And then you have the beginning of a world war. I think it's already begun. It's just hasn't gone full scale yet.
Yeah, I suspect that the one thing that's really holding Putin back is, he's not a dumb guy, and he does know Russian history. And this guy was the head of their version of the CIA.
Yeah,
So
the KGB.
the KGB, and so he knows where the bodies are buried. So I think when you look back on it, because we often talk about the world wars, but I've said this, and I think you've kind of agreed with me, that we're more in close to what started World War One than World War Two as far as the condition of the world. And if that is true, then Putin may be looking at Russia's history in World War One, because World War Two actually unified Russia. But
Hmm.
World War One was when the government, at that time it was the Tsarist government, fell because the people just couldn't take it anymore, and they basically just rose up and they said, we're either going to die fighting to turn this government over, or we're going to die anyway. So might as well die
Yeah.
for a cause. So I actually think that he may be looking at that aspect of Russia and trying to balance that, because, as I say, World War One tore them apart. World War Two, in a way, made them the country that they ultimately became.
Yeah, the repressive regime that killed, millions and millions of people. And, it's amazing that the people of Russia don't stand up against this. Of course, they said there's about one or two KGB agents, or I think they're called KSBs now, or something like that, per Russian citizen. So nobody knows who's not with the government or the secret. So it's a country of paranoia, is what it is. And they're in a. I don't know, John. We'll have to see how this movie plays out. I hope it doesn't go into full-mented uh, world war or start that.
Well, another thing that's a little bit different about the Russia right now, other than historically, is in the past, obviously the czars, they were what they were, but once the Soviet Union came into power, there was always a group of people that you kind of identified as the next man up or whatever, or probably a threat, and they got taken out periodically and stuff like that. I don't really, normally, and I'm a pretty good student of Russian history and all, but I couldn't name you who is potentially in line to take over if Putin were to retire or die or whatever. There's really doesn't you don't hear about the quote Politburo like you used to. So I don't know that they have an identified opposition in Russia right now, or even potential that I'm aware of, and I study it pretty carefully.
No, the last one they had, I forget the gentleman's name, but he'd been poisoned by Novichok twice. The first time he and his daughter got poisoned, he went into exile, came back. They arrested him, put him in prison, and he died from Novichok again. Or he got exposed to it again. He died probably from secondary complications. So who's number two? Think about when Putin went to China and he and Xi Jinping were talking about living forever. We've got the technology; we can live forever. And he doesn't want a successor, nor does Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping, he's taken over the role of emperor for life of China until they decide to get rid of him. And yeah, so these people have put themselves in permanent positions, and it doesn't bode well. It's like, Hun Sen of Cambodia he's the longest serving dictator in the world, a billionaire. His family's billionaires. Yeah, and they have elections, right? About like Putin does, or like Maduro, and they win 98% or 99%. So these people are dug in. They're like a tick on a dog. They're embedded. Um, And, until they change leadership, I don't believe the narrative is going to change. I don't think at some point he's going to become Santa Claus at Christmas time and give out gifts to everybody and peace to the world. That's not his modus operandi.
Yeah, well, where do retired dictators go and live out peaceful lives? I mean, think about that. There's no, I mean, for a guy like Putin or Xing, or Xi, I mean, that where do they go? You know what I mean? In other words, they're either going to be in power or they'll be dead, probably. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
they're in
or
total exile. You know, so
yeah,
so
you
there's
like
not like
Bonaparte,
there's
Napoleon,
yeah.
they put him in exile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I people need to understand that, and also I think Americans we fall into a trap of assuming because you hear what they say about like uh, our president and all they compare him to Hitler and Nazis and all that. We tend to think that other countries value human life the same way we do, and they don't. They quite simply do not. And you
You're
can
not
see
being
that in
fair there. You're
Russia.
not being fair there. Look at China. They value human life. If I need a liver, I'm going to take yours. That's how much I value it. Uh, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, just look at the waves of soldiers that they've lost, and I think that it's probably even more than what is being reported. They
You
don't.
think?
I mean, think about it, Ted. Go back to Vietnam. We lost what 58,000 people in Vietnam. I think something to that effect.
We're close to that. Yeah, that's just
In the 50s.
dead.
Yeah,
That's
killed.
not
That's what I'm
counting
talking.
the
I'm
damaged
talking about
ones. Yeah.
actually killed, and people were taken to the streets on that, and I don't blame them at all. But Russia's probably lost almost 1 million people already.
Oh,
You know,
well into that. And if you
and,
if you read the news, they've rationed gasoline. You can only buy so much, and they're a big gas company, but or nation. I mean, they're a great exporter and they've got tremendous resources, but they've had to ration it. They've cut off fuel by over 50% to Mongolia because of the strain on their economy. And then if you look at they're going through recruitment again, which means they're snatching people up off the streets. And you look at the exodus out of Russia of the young military fighting people. That war has been going on 4 years now. So people that were 14 years old, when it started, they're 18 years now, and Putin wants them in the army. And they say the average time period for a person on the front line in that war is, I think they measure it in minutes. And these people are like, I want to get out of here. So, yeah, people need to get rid of Putin. If they would deal with him and get rid of him internally, a lot of these things would stop.
yeah, well, it's one of those things that could literally happen at any second now. But we'll have to keep an eye on this. I do know that going back to what we said at the very beginning of the show, that there's going to be some sort of escalation in the Ukraine war over the next 2 months or so, because it just always is when they're fighting over there right before the winter. So something is definitely going to happen, I would
Right.
suspect. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but before we do, I want to remind people to make the call Freddie, become part of helping us to educate, motivate, and activate people. And we need your support on that. There's the moniker. Make that call Freddie. Take us to break, Ted.
Yeah, and we've got the Gator football season coming up September 5th. First game against FAU, I think it is, isn't it, John?
It is.
It is. And so you want to make sure your car is running properly and call Archer Automotive to get your car serviced so you don't get stuck in a traffic jam from a flat tire, a bad transmission, or motor. Call them for an appointment, 352-495-2485. They're open Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And tell them you heard about them through the Political Pirate Podcast with yours truly and the old salty dog, John Martin. See you after the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
Welcome back to the Three Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host, the old salty dog here, John Martin, and of course, the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Well, Ted, we got midterms coming up, and
We
President
do.
Trump, yeah, imagine that, midterms coming up. And President Trump put out an interesting video. He was talking at a rally, and he, there's been clearly when he's been on the ballot, he's done pretty well. But he's not actually on the ballot this time. But he made an interesting comment about that, and I want to play this video, and we'll come back and talk about it. Check it out.
And the problem that we have is they say that Trump does great when he's on the ballot, but when he's not on the ballot, his people don't come and they don't vote for senators, congressmen, and other Republicans. And that these people, they're running, they're great, but if Trump isn't actually on the ballot. So what I really want you to do is pretend, please, that I'm on the ballot. Just come and vote. It's so important.
Well, you don't usually hear the president beg, and I'm not saying he was begging, but he said, please, please vote like I'm on the ballot, because I am on the ballot. And in a way, he's absolutely right. He is on the ballot. Certainly the future of his next half of his last term here is on the ballot, without a doubt. But what are your thoughts about him making that plea, so to speak?
Well, I want to. I'm going to be nice. I think his memory's short. If you go back to the second term or the midterms of his first presidency, we lost bad. We lost the majority, and it was miserable being in the House in the minority. I mean, that was probably the worst time I served in the House. Even when Obama was in there, that was bad. But when Trump lost the midterms, yeah. So his name. It was on the ballot. His policies were on the ballot, and people rejected that. And I hear what he's saying, and I would like to see him take the focus on him and put it on America. And my policies are doing this for the country, but that's not possible, I don't think. And let's hope. And this is where people listening and passing this around. If we don't win the majority, it's going to go immediately into impeachment. Jamie Raskins is already lining up his whole committee to do that. And he's just a radical, progressive, just a hateful person. And I served with him. And so they're going to go right into that. They're going to investigate Trump family. They're going to do all this stuff, but it's not going to do a damn thing about the $40 trillion in debt. It's just going to add to that, John. It's not going to do anything about what's going on in world politics, other than they'll back out of the Iran conflict that we're in, and they'll give appeasement in payments and open up, remove all the sanctions on Iran. So you've empowered Iran because they beat the great Satan. And so I understand Trump. I don't want to lose the midterm. If we lose the midterm, it sets it up for failure for this country for generations to come. So please, everybody, whether you like President Trump or not, you don't like those other policies more. You don't like where the left took us. That's why we've got to keep a majority on the Republican side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you one guy that's having second thoughts about his support politically is none other than Robert De Niro. I don't know if you saw this or not, but they're doing this wealth tax, or tax on the millionaires with second homes and whatnot in New York City. Well, De Niro actually wanted a meeting with Mandami to discuss, because it's going to affect him, and apparently Mandami won't even meet with him. And De Niro is pissed off, saying, I basically helped make this.
Is that right?
And he won't even talk to me about how this is going to affect me. And I guess it's the FOF, whatever. He's in the find out stage right now, because and a lot of people are going to have an awakening behind that. And as far as the midterms, historically, a president in the second term, when they basically are a lame duck president, I think Trump is not quite in that category, but in general he is. And they lose the midterm. So that has historically happened. And then when you have on top of that, that you've got about 95% of the media opposed to him. You got so many people that aren't educated. They're motivated, they're activated, but they aren't educated about
They're
what
ignorant.
socialism and communism is, which is, to me, that's why I say education first, because motivation and activation without education can lead to devastation. So I just came up with that, Ted. Pretty good, right?
That's a good limerick there, buddy. Good job. Yeah, I mean, for Robert De Niro to want, he's wanting to carve out. He's special because he supported the mayor. You get what you vote for, buddy, and take it. It's interesting when you look at the wealth tax. How many people are leaving there? And this $5 billion they're supposed to raise on this 1% on, I think 1% of the population on the wealthiest, and I think it goes to the other 5% on somebody else. They said that the numbers were all wrong on that. Instead of raising $5 billion, it might raise $2.5 billion, but that'll be just a temporary bump, and that goes to the state up in Albany, not to New York City. And they're seeing all these people move across the river into New Jersey, and they're talking about FedEx leaving. So what he has really done is created an exodus that's going to be a disaster for New York. You've seen Wall Street set up Wall Street in Texas. You're seeing these big investment companies going to Texas, to Florida, anywhere but New York. And 3 years from now, New York will look totally different.
Yeah, well,
But they'll have 30% discounted food at Madami's stores.
I heard a lady, she's doing a series of videos. I think she's works for the Wall Street Journal, and I don't have her name written down, so I can't give her full credit for it. But she's put out this series of videos that, and I don't have one teed up, but maybe I'll try it maybe on another show. But she was explaining about socialism and how young people don't understand it. And she used the example of a refrigerator. And she said, a refrigerator back in like 1950, that 20% of Americans didn't even have a refrigerator, first of all. And the cost of one then, and the technology is so much better now, but the cost of one then, if you put it with inflation, would be like $4,600 for a refrigerator right now. Well, you can get a cheap one for probably $400 or $500 and a really good one for about $2,000. So her point was that now just about every household has a refrigerator. They have one that is better, more economically, efficient and everything else, and much cheaper than it's ever been when you compare it to inflation. And she was making the point that it was capitalism that put a refrigerator in everybody's home and that kind of thing. And it was capitalism that keeps it in there. It wasn't socialism, because if it was socialism, you probably wouldn't have, but half the people have one, and they would be $10,000.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
So I thought that was interesting. That people don't understand that.
They don't. Yeah, a good point is look at Russia. Look at their car. What is the premium car in Russia? Name it.
Probably a Mercedes from Germany.
They don't have a premium car. They don't have, you can't name anything like, what is a designer brand in Russia? It's a Kalashnikov AR rifle, maybe. I don't know. You look at their average income is about $18,000 in the 21st century. The level of poor in America, poverty level, is about, I think, 30,000. So our poor people are doing better than the average income in Russia. That's socialism coming out of communism, but it's just a screwed up system. And the amount, you just talk to somebody that's ever lived there, or Ukraine, it was a disaster then, and it's not any better now. But yet these people in America, they think that's a better lifestyle. It's absolutely ridiculous. So you look at Venezuela, that AOC and all that. Oh, we want this utopic socialist nation that we're going to create in the vision of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. We don't want it. Get out of here.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to this thing about the midterms, and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, let's stay on track here.
I agree with you 100%. Day one, if they lose the House, let alone the Senate where that would be tried, there's going to be impeachment. There's just no question.
No doubt about it.
And if you want to know about that, I'm going to play a series of a couple of videos here because Hakeem Jeffries, who is potentially going to be the next Speaker of the House, God help us, but he may not be, even if they win, because he may be in some trouble. But Hakeem Jeffries met with Jared Kushner, and if people don't know who that is, that's Trump's son-in-law. He's married to Ivanka, and Hakeem Jeffries is catching a lot of flack about this. Now, keep in mind that Jeffries and Kushner have worked together before. They're both basically New Yorkers, and they know each other. They have a history together. They worked on criminal justice reform during Trump's first administration, so they know each other. And Jeffries came out, and I'm going to play a piece of a video here in a few minutes talking about it, but he got attacked. So I want to play you a video. Now, this is James Carville, who is one of the old guards of the Democratic Party. The whole video is just really vile. But even this short snippet, about a minute of it, has got some pretty bad language. But he's talking about the meeting that Hakeem Jeffries had with Jared Kushner. Listen to this and we'll come back and talk.
We believe one thing above all. These people are a pack of felons and traitors. And you do not meet with them. You do not meet with them. There's only one thing you can do with people that you genuinely believe deep inside of every fabric of your body are a pack of thieves and a pack of traitors. That's what we believe. And we going to set out to prove that. And so you meet with Jared Kushner, we need to drag his ass before a committee and find about what backdoor dealing whorehouse shit he's got going on with Steve Witkoff and everybody else. We're not going to be nice to you. We don't like you. None of you.
I mean, there you have it. He's saying literally that Democrats, now keep in mind, this guy was one of the main orchestrators of Clinton's rise to power. He is literally saying that Democrats should not meet with anybody in the Trump administration, period, and says that they're all a bunch of felons and liars and traitors and, I mean, every name in the book. And I'm being kind by what he said.
You clean that up a lot compared to what he said.
Well, my mama would come out of her grave and slap me upside the head if I said some of the stuff that he said. But, I mean, Ted, how does this give you any hope? I mean, that they can work together. It's just insane.
Well, see, that's just it. It comes down to political ideologies. My side's going to beat your side. You know, who's looking out for the betterment of America? Neither one of those parties are. The Republicans are a lot better at looking at the vision, you know, going forward for America. These guys just want to be back in power at any cost. You know, it's funny how he changes too. Two things. He's talking about how corrupt the Trump family is and all this, but he overlooks how corrupt the Biden family was. You know, he doesn't even look at that. Oh, they're just business people. And, you know, if they're such good business people, why did they need all pardons preemptively? And so he overlooks that. And then he talks about how he doesn't want to work with them, like you said. Damn, you know, working with them, we're just going to take over power. So he's not looking really what's best for this country. And his style of politics, James, I hate to tell you, but it ain't popular anymore, and it's not going to win anything. If you're not willing to cross the aisle and work bipartisanly, and that was going on when Clinton was there and Newt Gingrich, they had that bipartisan going on, but that was the beginning of the end of bipartisanship up there. And Newt Gingrich was a big part of that, breaking that up. He told people you don't need to stay in Washington during the summer. You need to go home, work your districts. So people sold their homes. So Newt Gingrich was the one that kind of drove that, started that chasm. Before that, people were hanging out together. Their kids were playing baseball, and they would moderate and negotiate on bills. But that left when they started that.
Well, I want to play now. Hakeem Jeffries, as I said, he got attacked. You heard what Carville was saying about it, but Hakeem Jeffries came out and explained, so to speak, why he met with Kushner. And I'm just going to play a quick snippet of it. But if you're wondering, if you want proof, now this guy is in line to be the speaker if
I tell you
the
what,
Democrats take up. Go ahead, Ted.
no, I want people to look at this guy, and I want you to look at his delivery and his message and the unifying tone of it. So go ahead.
Yeah, so this guy is telling you in no uncertain terms what's going to happen if he has anything to say about it. Check it out.
He asked for a meeting, and I took it to discuss the affordability crisis that exists that is not a hoax. No one is going to get a pass. We're going to hold every single member of the Trump cartel accountable.
And New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani chiming in, backing Jeffries as he faces blowback from meeting with the president's son-in-law.
What do you think of Jeffries potentially being speaker in light of this?
I continue to support Congressman Jeffries and his bid to become the leader.
Jeffries and Kushner allegedly discussed housing, immigration, and the cost of living. Kushner has yet to comment on the meeting.
Ted, I mean, there you have it, man. He pretty much cut and dried, isn't he?
He sure is. That's the leader of the Democrat Party. He has terrible delivery. He has no appeal. There's no attraction to this guy of like, God, I want to follow him. And it'll be interesting what happens. I would bet they would put AOC as Speaker of the House if they won the majority over him, or Rashid Tlaib. Which, I mean, can you imagine how scary either one of those would be? This guy's dangerous because he can't get a majority. He got there in the beginning because Pelosi anointed him. And if you voted against him, you're automatically racist. So he's shown how ineffective of a leader he is. And that's why you see the Democrat Party straying so much. Type people like that, they don't need to be in politics, I don't think. But that's up to his constituents. And it's a reflection on his constituency. Wake up, people. This is not doing good for your country.
Well, I've said it many times, and I believe it more now than ever, Ted, that it's up to us, the American people. That's really what this show is about. It's up to us. We're never going to elect people better than we are. So if we don't personally take responsibility for our nation and our communities and where they're going, we are doomed automatically, because the American people have to be, you can't, like Thomas Jefferson said, you can't be both ignorant and free, or you want what never was and never will be. So that's what we got to do as American people. I mean, Trump, love him, hate him, whatever. He comes and goes. Presidents come and go. But the American people, I think we have a tendency to absolve ourselves of responsibility. And that is a critical and dangerous mistake. It
is. And it pains me that we keep going down the drain, the spirals are getting smaller, and I go back to when I came in, we were at $12.5 trillion in debt. And then it went to 13, then 15. And I railed against that. And I couldn't get people up there to go after that because it was all political. Well, I don't want to go and support that bill you're sponsoring, Yoho, because it looks like we're cutting. I'm like, we're not cutting, we're saving, this program like Social Security. And they keep electing people like that. And it comes down to, at some point, the piper's got to be paid. We're $40 trillion in debt. All this social stuff, it's important, but that's going to go away if we go bankrupt as a nation. And we're right on the brink of that, and then throw a war in there that you're going to have to fight a war. So, people, wake up and look at who's running, look at their accomplishments, and give them a term. And if they don't do well, vote him out, bring somebody else in. Just that alone will get people to pay attention up there in DC. Like, the American people have woken up and they're not going to put up with this anymore.
Yeah, well, Ted, to me, to show what the power of the people can do when they're motivated, educated, motivated, and activated, all we got to look at is you, Captain. You look at your election because, and I'm going to say this, you may not agree with me on it, but I'm going to say it. At the time, and I'm going to paint with a broad brush, at the time, Ted Yoho, because I didn't really even know you then. We got to know each other during that campaign. When you announced you were running against that incumbent, I guarantee you there wasn't a single corporate person, a single PAC, a single political leader like chairman of parties and whatnot that wanted you to win. Not a one across the board would wanted you to win. And you probably struggled a bit to even raise money. I went to fundraisers. It was there were farmers and ranchers that you had worked with. They knew you from your veterinary business and stuff like that. But it was the people that came together that pushed you over a 26-year incumbent who was entrenched in that, and you won, and you kept winning re-election after re-election, even when leaders of the party, like speakers of the House, when you were in there, weren't for you then, but after you kept winning, they kind of said, well, he's going to stick around. But to me, Ted, you are literally the evidence of what can happen. Can you imagine if the enthusiasm that got behind your campaign got behind America, or what we would have?
I truly believe that can happen. I believe a president can win without all that money, just focusing on the issues and going out talking to the common people out there, the people that are everyday people, people that came from the struggles that I came up with Carolyn, coming from nothing and working our tails off and taking hold of the opportunity in this country. That's there for everybody. And I truly believe you can bypass the corporate world. There was nobody going to support me from the leadership up there. But you know how many good friends I got out of leadership as soon as I won the primary? I got calls before they even announced it on national TV. I was getting calls from DC. Hey, we just want to introduce ourselves. You did a great campaign. We want to work with you. And then I'm getting $2,000 and $5,000 checks from people in leadership. I don't even know these people, and I'm like, God, they really like me.
Well, we only got a few minutes left in the show, but I want to play one more video, Ted, and I'm entitling this "Wake Up America." This is Hassan Piker on a very recent part of his podcast. And, the Democratic Socialists and all, they're all trying to run around this guy. People are trying to figure out how to get away from him or to embrace him and all that. But if you really want to know what is taking over the Democratic Party, listen to this.
And you want to know why? Because people don't fuck with Israel any longer. And if Jews in America keep putting this idea out there that they are singularly invested in Israel, eventually someone's going to come around and take action, not against the state of Israel, mind you, but against American Jews. Okay? We're teaching people the wrong lesson. I don't know how people don't recognize how dangerous this predicament is, how dangerous this is for Jews. You're running around basically tying your entire identity to a country that inevitably will be seen as basically Jewish ISIS. And you're saying, as Jews, this is all we care about. You're making anti-Semitism worse.
The only thing I say, and I wouldn't say that I respect, I don't know what to put the word, but I'll give him this. He at least tells you exactly how he feels. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't do anything. I mean, he doesn't nuance it. He literally is telling in that video, and this could be across the board, that Jewish Americans, forget Israel, that if they support Israel, that they're going to come under attack in America. And he is basically speaking it into existence. I believe him, by the way. But, I mean, there's no nuance there. This guy is literally threatening American people with death and destruction. I mean,
no, there's no doubt about it. You can't mince words there. And he's a Muslim. He was I forget where he was born, but he went to Turkey and he spent a lot of time in Turkey. And he was one of the young Turks, that radical podcast back when podcasts first started. I was on their program one time right after we won the primary, and they're just bad people. I mean, they're just out there to hook you, and there's too many people like that. And you look at the vitriol he's spewing. It's not uniting a country. It's uniting radical people together to tear down this country. And I don't want to bash Muslims. All Muslims are bad. I don't want to say that. But when you look at the amount of Islamic growth in this country and mosques and things like that, keep in mind the Muslim population in America is under 2%. But look how many radical ones are going into Congress. You got your Rashid Tlaib, you've got um, El Said, you've got Madami, you've got that Muslim population that is only less than 2% of America's population, starting to control the narrative. You look at what's going on in Maine and the demands that the Muslim population is putting in there, that you should hire Muslims over anybody else because they're disenfranchised. Such a small number. This is the wrong way for this nation. And it goes back to what Theodore Roosevelt said. You're either 100% American or not at all. And you do that by assimilating into the American culture. You learn the language and you obey the constitutional law. There is no room for anything else in this country. And if I speak out against that, it doesn't make me a homophobe or an Islamophobe. It just says, no, I'm a patriot of this country and we're going to protect it for future generations as our founding fathers and the generations before us did. There's no room for Hassan Piker in this country or in politics, and anybody that follows him needs to be thrown out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my 2 cents.
And a good 2 cents it is. A couple of shillings there, but are
shillings.
Pieces of 8 since you're the captain of the pirate ship. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing, make that call that I tell you about all the time. Call Freddie, become a sponsor of the show, help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. Take us out, Ted.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody watching. We're getting messages from around the globe that are watching this podcast. Send it out. Educate people. Let them know what's going on. Let them know what's on the line here. America's not a perfect country. It's got room to get better, and it's going to take an educated force to do that. Here we are on the eve of the weekend. It's Friday afternoon, and you're probably looking to go somewhere or pull your boat somewhere. Make sure it's in good mechanical condition, and you can do that by calling our good friends at Archer Automotive at 352-495-2485 and tell them you heard about them through the Political Pirate podcast with yours truly and the captain or the old salty dog, John Martin. And they're open from Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And again, that phone number is 352-495-2485. Y'all take care, and we will see you Monday afternoon. Later.